So, Kirsty, how did you come to be in Malakuta?
Well, we moved here when I was in grade 2, so year 2000, with my family, my mum, my dad, my sister. We used to live in Bensdale, and we had family in Melbourne and family down here. So we just decided we want to be close to family, so we moved here. Family being my nan and pop on my dad's side.
And did you go to school here?
I went to school here in Malakuta P12 College.
When did you finish?
I finished in 2010.
And you've stayed in Malakuta working since you finished school?
No, I went to Melbourne for 1 or 2 years, and then I moved back.
Okay. So since you've been back, you've been working in the real estate agents?
No, I mostly just worked in hospitality because my mum owns Cafe 54 in the middle of town. So I've always worked for her and helped her out. And then I floated between the pub and IGA. And I've only been working in real estate for probably just coming up 12 months now.
Okay. So in the lead up to last summer, you'd just started working for the real estate agency for a couple of months?
I started in Easter last year. So it was going to be my first summer, and I was just so nervous because it gets so busy here over Christmas and all the holiday rentals and stuff. So I was ready. I thought I was, but yeah.
So in the lead up to Christmas and New Year, whereabouts is your house and your nan and pop's house compared to Malakuta, where we are today?
So I'm about from here, 3 or 4K heading back out of town. The easiest way to describe it would be when you're coming in on the Genoa Road, there's a dirt road, the very first dirt road on your right you can take, and I'm down there, I'm down near the waterboard.
Are you right in the thick of the bush?
Yeah. My house and my nan and pop's house was it was 2 dwellings on the one property. Mm-hmm. They were both owned by my nan and pop. So me and my partner just lived in their other house, and we looked after nan and pop, and because we were in the process of starting building. So yeah, we were just living there until we could eventually build and move in. But I've always lived in the bush because about 200 metres down a hill, up a hill is my parents.
I see.
So yeah, they're also in the bush.
So living in the bush, had you made plans or preparations for what you would do in the event of a potential bushfire?
I personally did not, because I have never really understood a bushfire. I didn't understand. When we got told it was coming, I just thought it was this big scary monster that just ripped through everything and you literally had no chance unless you ran. But I always remember when I was younger, my dad prepping like a bushfire was going to come. So he had sprinkler systems on his shed, on his house. He had 2 trailer things that he'd set up, rigged up himself with a bulky, so he used them as a firefighting tank, and things like that. And he cleared a lot. I don't know how distance-wise it would be, but he cleared around his property. Where me and Nan and Pop were, it was probably a bit thicker because they didn't really clear trees around their property.
So how did you find out that the fire was coming?
I don't know, just word of mouth probably from locals. Mm-hmm. And Dad was very switched on, and so was my partner. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that there was a bit of an issue with advertising and community notice about the fire. I don't know if you want me to go into it now, but...
Well, tell me about that. So were you working when you first heard about it? How did you find out about it?
Well, I was working in the cafe, and so it was super busy. And we have about 8 staff on when it's super busy, and you're friends with all of them. My mum was there, and there was a community meeting on. I can't remember if it was 2 days or 1 day before it was expected to come through the front, and I didn't even know it was on. And I'm quite active on social media, and I know Mum, being a business owner, she had no idea it was on. None of us or our staff had a chance to go to the meeting or anything. So I found that. So we just kept working, and we got told pretty much what happened in the meeting by tourists coming in that were packing their stuff to leave and getting obviously coffee and stuff.
Right.
So I don't know. So then continued on from there. I felt like we were all going home to die. It was just this weird feeling. and then still didn't really know that much about it because me and my partner like packed a few things, got Nan and Pop packed, and then we put like sand in socks in our gutters and wet down everything. And just left, but I remember leaving a heap of stuff behind because I'm like, I'll come get this in the morning. My boyfriend was already hosing down both my Nan and Pop's house and ours, and doing the sand in the guttering to flood it, if that makes sense. We moved all of our stuff inside, like our surfboards and our bikes, for some reason. I don't know why. Got my grandparents in the car and we took them to the cafe because at that stage, me and my boyfriend still didn't really have a plan, I suppose. He has a boat, so he'd put that in the water earlier on during that day.
Yep.
And we were going to go out and wait it out on the lake. I personally didn't want to leave my mum and dad behind. And he doesn't have family in town, so he was happy to just chill with me. So
did you stay in the cafe?
We ended up, we did. So the initial thing was my mum was going to stay in the cafe and my dad was being stubborn and not going to leave. And we went around there and helped him get everything, and he ended up being like, well, yeah, we'll go. So we all went down the cafe. Dad brought his big bulky system. So that was parked out the back to hose down things. And then we ended up having about 20 people in the cafe, like tourists, a family that work also in the cafe, just
sheltering.
Like 6 dogs. I was just like, oh God, my dogs were just, so put them out the back. But we had a generator there as well. So we stayed open to people that wanted coffee and fireys.
Right, because you'd lost power to the town.
Yeah.
So you had a generator already in place. Yeah. All right.
You pretty much need a generator in town.
And why is that?
The power goes out a lot because there's only one power line in and out.
Right.
So especially being a business in town, it's really beneficial.
I see. So what about phones? And you're talking about having access to social media. Did you still have that?
We still did,
point?
The service was slow, but you could still load everything and things like that.
And
obviously,
what kind of things were you looking at?
Facebook, the Vic emergency app. That was good, but I remember it telling us that the front was coming through at 5 p.m. on the day of the 30th.
Yep.
So it was just like, oh, we got to go. But then because it didn't come through until the next
morning.
And also with the updates through the night, it would be like, oh, the fire's approaching, right, it's close, which is right near where we're building. So I'm like, oh God. And then it went on to Mirrabooka. I'm like, oh God, it's moving towards our build and stuff. So it was stressing, but it was also good. I don't know.
And eventually it did go through those areas.
Yeah.
And you and your Nan and Pop lost your homes?
Yeah, me and Nan and Pop did. So there's about 5 homes, but 4 lots along that strip.
Yep.
And ours and Nan and Pop's are the only ones that went.
And you waited it out here in town at your mum's cafe on the main street?
Yep.
Did you get down near the foreshore?
No.
Right.
No, we stayed from the tourists coming into the cafe that day after the community meeting. They had said that a safe place to be was the centre of town because the CFA was always going to protect that area, so we considered staying in the cafe to be the best option.
And they did protect that area. There's not been any
From
loss.
memory, there was always at least one CFA truck parked at the roundabout. Every now and then it would probably take off. And you'd be like, oh my God, where are you going? But it would come back.
So were you inside the cafe when the fire came through, in the sense of it went early in the morning? Had you stayed there overnight?
We did, yeah. We had, like I said before, we had about 20 people in there. But it was really strange because out the front was my dad and my boyfriend, and they were just watching, and I never knew what to expect. And I normally get really anxious and stuff, but I was like going outside. And we had the bulky system at the back, and we were putting buckets everywhere in case Amber attack happened.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went and put buckets through town just in case it fell, because also IGA across the road was open.
Yes.
So we were constantly talking to them, which was nice to have a bit of community people around. And also at the back of the cafe, we had some tourists that were looking after all of their camping stuff. So it was kind of nice. Like, they had the back, we had the centre, and then IGA over the other side of the road. Just was like comforting.
So all the community was actively defending all of your businesses and each other.
Yeah, so it was good.
So the morning came. What was it like?
It
What was it?
Black, really scary. It was really hard to breathe.
Okay.
Yep, and hard to see.
And then into New Year's Eve. What did you think your role was going to be at that point? Did you think about that?
Not really. No, I just, to be honest, was so heavily guided by my dad. It was like he was so nervous, but you just seen how calm he was. So that was really nice. And then after the front went through, it was, quickly get in the car, go and check everyone's properties.
Yep. So you went around checking properties, and you would have seen that a lot of properties had been lost.
Yeah.
You've been working at the real estate agent. Did you think it was going to be part of your job helping those people find somewhere to live?
It crossed my mind on that initial day, if that's what you're asking. And I was constantly texting Kerry, because we're also quite close outside of work.
Yep.
Because she's my boss in the real estate. And she initially went out and looked at all of the holiday and owners' properties,
right,
which was just amazing. Like, I can't believe that someone could think to do that right away. But I personally went, because I was with my dad, we went to my sister's property and drove like out to ours and then our build and things like that. Obviously noticing other houses along the way, I would relay messages to people in IGA if their house was okay or not, because I knew they were concerned and things like that.
Is it right to say that, from what you understand, that some of the houses were houses of people who live here all the time, and some of the houses were houses of people which were holiday rentals?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or vacant ones that we have listed for sale, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so quite a mix of different kinds of properties.
Definitely.
All right. So at some point, did somebody make a list of all the properties that have been lost?
We sat down and we compiled a bit of a list of the holiday houses that were destroyed, and also the houses that we had listed.
Yep.
And then as we started kind of moving through procedures, we're like, oh, maybe we kind of need a list of people that have actually lost their homes so we can get in contact with them to see if they found somewhere to go. So we started compiling this list, and then we found that we didn't know, we either wouldn't know someone's address, but we'd know their last name. So we just put down their last name, or we wouldn't know their name whatsoever, but we knew the address, so we'd put that down. So there was nothing official about listed, or we didn't know if we had missed anyone. We didn't know if we had gotten anything wrong. But that's okay, because we were kind of just using it for our own personal use. But then we got asked by a lot of other agents, well, not agencies, I suppose it's like groups.
Okay. Let me ask you some more about different parts of what you just told me. The first part is there's over 100 homes that have been lost in this. So did your list grow over time as you were adding it in the way that you described?
I suppose it did, because we would remember this one, and you had just so much going on. So it was really hard to get everything right the first time, if that makes sense. And
how long did it take to sort of start to get this list sort of put together in the way you've described?
Well, I remember the day after the front went through, I went up, and me, Kerry and Jenny, who's the other lady that works in the office, we sat down because we had to go through people that we had, guests that we actually had in a holiday house. We had to call them and make sure that they were okay. So from that day, I remember the list started. So we were just slowly adding to it. Then it was probably a week and a half after that we started really feeling like, oh, we have to have a list ready for these things, like noticing that we needed a list. So we'll do one. And then that was probably when we also were starting to get asked by like DELP And
Okay, so let's just so you were asked some questions by DELP. Now DELP is the department, and you also mentioned some other organisations.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure the local cops did ask us for if we had a list of something. The Lions Club wanted a copy of a list for, I think, donation reasons. So that was scary too, because I would have hated to have forgotten someone on that list and them not get a donation.
I understand.
You know?
Yes.
So I felt like that could really be addressed. It would have been so helpful.
With the list, what about the people who were still here in town but now had nowhere to be because their home had burnt down or the holiday house had burnt down?
Yeah.
Did you have a role in trying to help those people find somewhere to live?
Yes. Yeah, I believe we did, because we're pretty lucky in Mallacoota. We're a small community and we're all friends, or we all know each other. And when it comes down to it, we're all going to help each other out, really. So I suppose like those first, like even that initial night after, if you knew someone had lost their home, it would be like, do you have somewhere to go? This was more as a friend role, I suppose, not as a real estate role. It's like, are you okay? You got somewhere to go. You just make sure that everyone's okay. But yeah, after that, it was starting to tackle those things. So we did end up housing some locals in emergency housing, which was good.
How many people do you think needed emergency housing?
Look, there was a fair few. We probably put emergency housing locals about 12 or 15 maybe. A lot of people we approached initially didn't want somewhere to go. They had friends to stay at. We had a list of properties that landlords had contacted us about in this initial week after the bushfire, saying, I want my property to be cleared of holiday bookings and you put emergency people in there.
Right.
We actually found that the people really utilising those offers was tourists that were staying in the hall, because that's where a lot of them went. So the Red Cross had set up down there, and the Red Cross would put, for example, we had this young couple that had a girl, probably 2, and a newborn, and they were on this list to be air-vac'd out. So they, instead of sleeping in the hall, they went on a list and we would put them in emergency housing for a couple of nights until they could get airlifted out.
So you've set up, you've provided the list to the different organisations, and you're continuing to use the list as you're going on through the days and weeks after the fire's gone through. What about money to help people pay for rentals? So obviously some were given rents in effect for free, it sounds like, or just have access to properties. But longer term, what kind of assistance was there for people who were left with nowhere to live?
Yeah, so we kind of have discovered a few little things that kind of brought up an issue that would have been better to not handle with. For example, we were putting people in emergency housing that probably didn't have access to grants, and that due to lack of advertisement of these grants. I think I'd mentioned to you before the DHHS grant for 12 weeks rent. So that one was where they would pay for a tenant's rent for 12 weeks, 3 months, and also their bond. Now there was, like, to the best of our knowledge, no kind of advertisement of that. There was no way for the tenants to really find out. The DHHS did ask us for a list of people that lost their homes, but it happened like a few weeks after.
I see.
And that's when we could go on to this grant, and then we contacted all our tenants.
And help that happen?
Yeah.
All right. So with the grant monies, do you recall how the grant monies were distributed?
Yeah. So in the case of that particular grant, it was the rent was paid into the tenant's account, and the bond was a cheque sent to us to lodge with the RTBA.
So the grant money is deposited in the tenant's account, but then presumably the landlord needs to wait for the tenant monies to come across.
So what we found a lot, it's kind of like we'd set up all these tenancies and we're still waiting for rent. So it's like you're waiting, and these landlords, and some of them, we had to really ask them if they would consider doing at least a 12 months thing. Some offered up their property straight away. Like hands down, they wanted to help out any way they could. And landlords have been excellent, really, for the most part. But yeah, they were like, well, why haven't we seen this full amount of rent yet? And it's like, well, we haven't been paid. So then had the nasty job of trying to chase up these people who have already been through hell to ask them for rent. So we decided to call the DHHS to see if they'd been paid the money, because it was maybe a delay in them getting the grant, meaning they couldn't afford it. That would make sense, but they had mostly been all paid this rental amount.
Well, do you know why they were not paying?
I don't think it was
different for everybody.
Yeah, it's different case to case, but I don't think that any of them purposely didn't pay it. Right. I think that it was because the bank was not really open at all, or very sporadically through the whole thing. A lot of them were pretty old school and banked with checks, so that couldn't. A lot of them, maybe more of the elderly tenants, they had no access to online banking. I mean, there was this one tenant that I had to go around and help her set up her whole internet banking, and she still doesn't really understand, but it would be difficult.
And you didn't have power for a couple of weeks either.
No.
And you didn't have internet service.
Yeah, that was hard.
I see.
Yeah.
So those levels of complexity and difficult.
Yeah.
For everyone to manage.
We were pretty lucky. All the tenants that we had previously rented to before the bushfire, they kept paying their rent. We are lucky. It's a small town, so you know everyone, and you just kind of, everyone's pretty good.
Were there any troubles getting everybody into a property, or was there any problems with particular groups of tenants finding it harder to find places to stay?
Yes, definitely. We found that we had a lot of trouble housing single middle-aged men. For some reason, there's just this stigma, and I don't know why, that they're not good tenants.
Okay.
We still are having trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
But does that mean they're homeless?
No, not really. In particular, we have this one gentleman who has to be out of his property, and we have nowhere to put him.
I see.
So it's not that he's homeless, it's just that he has to be out and we don't have anywhere to offer him.
I see. So has it ultimately meant that it's just taken longer to place those people, or those men, or they've gone elsewhere?
It's taken longer, definitely. It is harder because some landlords just think that they're not good tenants, even though you can provide evidence that they are, in fact, great tenants from a real estate, like from an agency point of view. And then it was also maybe if the house that we had available was a 4-bedroom house,
right,
and they can't afford the rent there, then I know there was talk. There's this talk of these portables being brought in for people like that, for single people, or maybe a small couple or something like that. But the portables were something like 15 squares, like they were tiny, which is perfect, I suppose, when you do have nowhere to go, but it can be pretty down and depressing being somewhere that small.
Yeah.
So we had tossed around the idea of, why is there no kind of incentive given to landlords to take on a renter? Like, can't there be some kind of promise? I'm going to make sure that you get 12 months rent. May it be that some kind of organisation matches just say if your rent was $220 a week, maybe they add on it, I'll match half or whatever, so that the landlord is guaranteed to have that continuing rent. And maybe it means any damages done will be rectified straight away.
Did you have any dealings with insurance companies in this process?
Yeah, they're constantly contacting, even now still, the office for claims and pictures and stuff like that, organising with tenants the time when they can go in. Yeah.
And has that been a complicated process, or has it been okay?
No, not overly.
Okay.
Mostly for our role in that, dealing with the insurance company is just corresponding through email. So I've heard hard things with certain people dealing with their insurance. We didn't have insurance personally, so I don't know.
So you didn't have insurance for your home or your contents?
No contents insurance.
So your surfboards and...
Yeah. But we did get donated surfboards, which was lovely, by the Malakuta board riders. So that was, that was good.
So what have you done to, have you had any government or charitable assistance yourself, you and your partner, and your grandparents?
Yeah, so I suppose when with Nan and Pop too, the main issue was because we were 2 dwellings on the one property, I wanted to make sure that they got access to everything.
Yep.
And I wanted them to have the first, priority. I would never want to take away from them. So it was a collective effort of the family kind of helping them move through grants and things like that. So we were fully aware of what we could go for. It was so busy after the bushfire, working the real estate, like that could sometimes finish at 9 or 10 with emergency housing situations, and you just get a call to go house these people, so you go down. So it was really hard time-wise to kind of get financial help or anything like that. But when things started to slow down, it was a lot easier to, because they requested documents and you didn't have the documents because they burnt and stuff like that. So that was easier to do when things slowed down.
So when the recovery was underway in the way you've just described, where was your office located? Did you stay in the main road, or were you at some other location?
When there was no power, we were operating from the Malakuta Golf Club because they set up the large industrial generators, and the golf club and some of town had power. So we brought all of our computers there and we worked from there every day.
And who else was there with you?
It was Kerry Warren, so my boss, and then also Jenny Warren, who works in the office.
And what about the other businesses or government agencies? Were they with you there as well?
The golf club stayed open for people to come in and charge their phones or somewhere to chill out. We also, because the generators were being kept at the golf club, they had to be monitored regularly by the army guys. So they were there, they were in the golf club. They actually slept in the golf club for a few weeks. They were there also. Speaking
about the Army, so the Australian Defence Force were deployed here with HMAS Choules and HMAS Sycamore, as well as the aerial support as well. Did you have any dealings with them yourself?
Only when I was in the golf club and they would come in and chat with us, and also because they didn't have cars over here, you'd like lend them your car to go drive around in or things like that. So they were really lovely in the cafe. They came in all the time, and it was really good because it kind of kept business ticking along for my mum in that sense, because they came in and they would come in. Yeah. And then also there was this really awesome initiative, the World Central Kitchen.
Oh yes, what's that? Tell us about that.
I'll try and explain it the best I can. They're like a organisation that go to areas affected by a natural disaster, and they have a cook for everyone to come in and get and things like that. But what they kind of initiated in Malakuta was this little card system that was given to locals, and you could go into any of the eateries in town, and one hole punch was $20. So just say if you had a card, you could go in and spend and you get up to $20 free, but you got that in 5 purchases.
Yep.
So that really brought a lot of locals and that back out, supporting the local businesses. So it worked out really well.
So you met with the commissioners on the 19th of March,
yeah,
and it's now the 4th of May.
Yep.
What's changed, if anything, in that time for you?
Well, no, from a real estate point of view,
yep,
where kind of dreading in 12 months' time, because we did a lot of tenancy agreements for a 12-month period.
Right.
Uh,
So that's back in January and February?
Yep, January,
Okay.
February is when most of them started. And the issues that we will probably encounter at the end of this 12 months is landlords wanting to convert back to a holiday rental.
I see.
Yep. So you will in turn have the tenants be having to rehome the tenants.
How would you describe what the work is on in terms of rebuilding?
So you hear some stories and it's moving quickly, and you hear some stories and it's not. Personally, like, my grandparents are going to rebuild up where we were, and the GrowCon is there at the moment doing the cleanup, so that should be done by the end of next week.
Okay.
And they're rebuilding through GJ Gardner Homes. It's going to be the quickest and easiest thing, I think, for them, because they'll handle all the soil testing and things like that. And they've been told they'll most likely be in before the end of this year. So I feel like that's a fairly quick thing to be happening.
Yep.
But some people, that's not the case, I suppose. They might be waiting a lot longer.
So there's a possibility that in January, February next year, landlords wanting to move back to holiday rentals, hoping we're past both bushfires and COVID-19 season.
Yeah.
But there may be a lot of people left without.
Yeah, we might be
places
needing to
stay.
rehome.
And you'll be doing what you had to do beginning of the year potentially again.
With no homes. Like, yeah.
Are you aware of any planning going on, any department planning or any communications with the recovery agency about how to tackle that issue?
But I've heard that the council are letting people live on their blocks in a shed or a dwelling. So that's what we're doing.
Like temporary accommodation.
Yep. So I got a call from Windermere. I don't know if you've heard of the Windermere organisation. They're kind of like agents for people who have lost their homes or been bushfire affected, and they will help you find grants, or they'll just help you through certain processes. And they called and offered me and my partner a portable to put on a block. But we're one of the lucky ones that have a shed to live in. So that's something, I suppose.
Is an agency like that, do you think, a helpful
Definitely,
tool?
Yeah. They also were initially assigned to the property being my grandparents. My grandparents are lucky because they've got my dad, and me and my sister we would do everything for them that Windermere would do for people, and I feel for people that don't have the support of their family, I think that Windermere have done really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of charitable organisations that were helping in the immediate aftermath of the fires and the relief, and then longer into the recovery effort. How do you, either just from your observation or talking with all the friends you've got here in town, how do they deal with all these charities that have come to help?
Some people are more willing to accept help than others, so I've noticed that. Can I be honest with you? I went to one organisation with my grandparents, and they were so keen to make an emotional connection with them that they made them cry. It was really overwhelming and overbearing, and it was just so inappropriate, I felt. Some organisations have been great, just took a step back, really understanding that the last thing you want is someone to be in your face, and they've been really helpful, but some were just trying to cancel you. And I think that the access to counselling and services like that are available after this sort of thing, it's pretty expansive. You have every opportunity to go see someone if you want to.
Yep. And
I feel like that's a good thing, but not for it to be literally forced upon you.
I see.
All the time. And you'd go somewhere and someone would be like, do you want to speak to a counsellor? I'm like, no, please, I'm fine. I've got it all sorted. And they'd be like, what about in 3 months? And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel in 3 months. Can you get away from me? Yeah, it was just really overbearing and uncomfortable.
So you've already mentioned a whole lot of things. But looking back, are there any other things that you think maybe was important to try to fix or try to do better next time?
Do you know what would be kind of, I don't know, if you looked into it, but maybe not a group, maybe making like a paid position or 2 paid positions, because the position would involve ongoing training in how to react in ways that would help your particular community prior, during and post natural disaster. So obviously bushfire would be one for here because we're a bushfire prone area. But
So
one
like
thing
a
that got
community
brought,
person from the community,
yes,
who's trained to deal
Yeah.
and liaise with your
Yeah.
community. I see.
because like for example at the last forum it was brought up that a lot of I suppose at-risk people, like maybe elderly with dementia,
Yeah.
things like that, it was brought up that they were maybe left in their home or things like that. No one really, and I don't know if it's true or not because obviously I don't have anything to do with it, but this was what was said, was that they were left in their home. Like this paid position or this role could be like they actually have a list there of people at risk, so that if anything like a flood, a bushfire happens, they can then delegate out to the correct officers or departments to go and do that. You know, it's just
So that would help
kind
the
of-
recovery because you'd be better prepared
Yeah.
in advance.
and just they would kind of, through extensive training, I suppose, develop these procedures that would help things run more smoothly.
Because it sounds a lot like you did that, untrained, but making the best of it.
I had no idea what I was doing. I tried my hardest. Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah, everyone did really well. It's just, it's always like hindsight, hey. I think that also a lot of things, and I also don't know because I wasn't there. I was in the cafe, obviously, but I had friends that stayed on Terra Nova Drive
Yep.
to fight the fire, and they had said that the CFA were told not to defend past this point. So you had a lot of locals that were defending
It
Wait,
themselves.
yeah.
Right.
and to my understanding, they were getting instructions from an organisation like out of Malakuta. So I feel that maybe giving a bit more power to locals or, you know, something like that, it could have been more beneficial, I think.
And where do you hope Malakuta will be this time next year? How do you think the community would best be placed?
Well, I hope that the COVID-19 stuff is over too, but I don't know, I feel like right before the regulations got brought in, it really felt like things were getting back to normal a little bit. Everyone was starting to go back to work. It was starting to just feel a bit more normal. So I hope that we can get back there. I hope that I'm seeing a lot of people rebuild and be in their homes. That would be lovely. I hope to not see locals internally fighting because everyone's quite verbal on their opinion of what should be cleared and not. Like, you know, I just hope that we are all kind of getting together. It'd be nice to, maybe see certain things implemented to create more of a local presence surrounding bushfires and I suppose management of nature strips and forestry and stuff like that. I don't know. It'd be nicer to have more local knowledge because really decisions are made in an office somewhere else. They're not here.
Is there something you'd like the commissioners to know, something else you'd like them to know or to remember about Malakuta?
I suppose, like, a lot of people holiday here for how beautiful it is and how kind of nature orientated it is. Like, we have a large area that's national park and it's just beautiful. We have so many species of birds and just natives, and it's like, I would just like Malakuta to keep that kind of integrity because it would be very sad to see everything kind of destroyed through, I don't know how to say it diplomatically, but you know what I mean. I don't want everything to be cleared out completely, because that's why people come here. And at the end of the day, I do feel like a bushfire is a natural disaster, so it's going to happen. Certain things thrive from it. It's just trying to implement procedures to make it less traumatic for people and maybe less damage.
Well, thanks very much.
That's okay.
It's been really good to speak with you.